G'day, Michael here. This video is about how I manage like 3D printing and slicing, and how you can really make a computer work for you in ways perhaps you hadn't been aware of. Obviously I use Linux. This is Debian Linux. I don't really care which distribution you use so much, or that much what desktop environment you choose to use, but the tools that you have available to you on Linux are just far and away more useful than macOS or Windows. And I'll show you what I'm talking about, that I'm not just blowing hot air. This is quite a real set of advantages that I have using Linux for my 3D printing management and slicing and so forth. Alright, so there's a few things about the desktop which I'll try and introduce in a way that's just a small parcel and makes sense to you straight up. Now obviously you're looking at Spotify, I like my music, don't worry about that. Here, this window that I've got with the, that you see the camera showing my mug with the sexy glasses and so forth. I've set it to always on top, so no matter what program I click on, it's on top. For example, let's say you wanted to use like a calculator. Here's a calculator, let's do that. I'll put it on top. So it's always on top. Then if I've got like a CAD program open, let's just do something like that. Bang that over there. Oh, the other thing is I find very handy things like this works on Windows. You just bang it against the side and it ends up using half the screen. But a nice one is you bang it against the top left corner and it'll use a quarter of the screen that way, or the bottom left corner, quarter of the screen that way. That's fairly common amongst the desktop environments on Linux. I haven't seen that work very well on, I haven't seen it work on Windows at all. Jump in and let me know if that's not true. Okay, so let's just open something. I don't know. Whatever that is. Okay, so here I've got a part. Let's say I had the calculator at hand. Because it's always on top, I can still work on the CAD program and the calculator doesn't disappear. What you might be used to is if I did that, I went to, I've got some number calculated out and then I want to change something in the CAD program, the calculator disappears. But by having it always on top, it stays in front of the program you're working. So this makes just day-to-day, everyday work so handy because the window stays on top. So if I click on here, both this the camera output and the calculator are sitting on top of the other two programs, so I can move around and those programs stay at hand. Now this one here I've got set to always on visible workspace. Well, what does that mean? You can see 8 visible rectangles down here. They represent workspaces. So let's go to another workspace. That's the first workspace, second workspace, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, yada yada. Alright, so let's go to the first one. Let's say open a terminal. And here I'm going to show you the other major part of what I do with the slicing. I have a number of printers, and rather than trying to copy all the profiles around to the different machines and then have something that update on one and not on the other and that sort of guff, I've decided to have one central computer for that purpose. So what I'll do is I'll log into that computer using SSH. You can do this kind of thing even with a Windows client and have, say, the Linux server, or a Mac client and a Linux server. So you might dedicate just for slicing a Linux box somewhere else on your network near your printers. Anyhow, I'm going to log into it. Now the main reason why I have that machine set up as remote is because I don't want to be in the room where I've got all those 3D printers running, because there's some concern about emissions and health and so forth. The computer's quite happy to be in there and I don't have to be. So I've set it up in such a way that I'm not physically having to be in there unless there's something I've got to attend to. So generally everything's remote. Okay, so I've just logged into that machine, and what I'm going to do is get it to run a VNC server. Now I'll just zoom in on that so you can see what the hell I'm doing. That's nice and big. So a second ago I just logged in with SSH Michael at that machine's name, And then I've got VNC server. Once I was logged in, I'm running VNC server with that geometry. I've got a 4K monitor on this machine. I've set the virtual environment to 3000 by 1800, so it's smaller than this screen. It'll fit on this screen. Okay, in a second it'll be up and running. There we are. It's up and running, ready to go. Now let's connect to it. So let's go. The program I tend to use is this guy, Vinagre, whatever they call it. So let's connect to it now. The machine is called Debian.local. It's got it in its history. Bangity boom. Alright, yeah, you can see all these, well, slicer logos. Now, here's the other side of Linux. Not only have I got it as a remote machine, and I can use the desktop environment on it, and, you know, basically my machine here becomes a monitor, keyboard and mouse for that machine in this situation. But what I've done, because I found with the slicing software, my printers are so different that you can't just simply have like a filament profile and a printer profile and then, you know, a profile for different styles of slicing, because speeds are completely different for, you know, a 0.5mm tip to what they are for a 0.8mm tip or a 0.4mm tip. So I found it too complicated to try and manage with the slicers having just profiles to tweak all the time. So what I've done is in fact made a user for each of my printers. Now, what have I got there? I've got seven printers there set up as different users. So I'd actually log into that computer as a user by the name of that printer. Right, so the machine I'm working on right now, the printer is called the Cricket. Well, that's what I've called it. Get a password to get it going. Okay, now right now, let's say I wanted to do, let's do that. Let's arbitrary what it is for the moment. So there's the item, it's already laid out. Let's just see what the slice works out like. So what I like about Slicer is that it does the slicing in the background. So I'm not going, okay, now I've done this, I've done that, let's slice. It's already done it by the time I'm sort of thinking about it. Alright, so let's go through the slice, see what it looks like. And I'll show you what I mean about the profiles. Here we've got the profiles. I've got general course is what I've called it. I've got 5 to choose from. PLA, PTG, the two things I've got there. And the printer profile I've just called Cricket. Right, okay, so that's that. Now, on the other desktop, this other machine, I'm running KDE, which is a different desktop environment. Not to be confused. The near machine, the one I'm in front of, is running Mate. Its arrangement, let's go to a clear desktop so we're not being confused. This is the desktop environment called Mate, and its layout is, so you've got a like drop down menu, and your software is sorted in, you know, what kinds of software you want to run. Then you've got places and system, like you might have control center to configure and so forth. So I like that on the local machine. It's actually kind of sort of my favourite desktop environment. I'm not that fussy as to which one I use, but that's pretty much my favourite. I bring the system monitor on this desktop. Okay, so this is the local machine. It's got 12 cores, 24 threads. It seems very busy, but it's probably doing very little. Let's just see how busy or otherwise it is. It's equivalent to having 2.76 CPU cores running, right? And the screen recording will be costing the bulk of that. Okay, so you can see the memory is hardly being touched. The moment I do something on this remote desktop, you should see that the network traffic going on. So you can see that there, particularly if I do something like rotate, that should generate a fair bit of traffic. There you see the traffic's generated. As soon as I don't do anything, it calms down. Because basically it's having to resend all those pixels across the network to this machine. Okay, so on this machine I'm using the Mate desktop. On the remote machine I'm using the KDE desktop. I've also got 6 desktops set up on there, but I can change it any second. Add a virtual desktop, maybe another one, so I can make that 8 as well. It doesn't matter, they're easily enabled or disabled. So that's that. let's go to another one. Let's open another slicer for another printer. Let's add some job for it. Oh goodness, authentication required. Let's see that. Done. Okay, so that's a bit of a complicated part. And you can see, oh, it's still in the process of slicing it. There we go, so it's been sliced. And we can check through the layers. Whatever. So, I've got those two desktops running. Do we have... let's just see how busy that machine is. Applications. Okay. The remote machine's got a different sort of, slightly different desktop appearance because of the KD desktop environment. But essentially it's giving us the same kind of information. And you probably see, if I do that, we should have corresponding network traffic on both machines. Spike here, spike there. Because they're the ones doing all the talking. Alright, so I've got a number of users on the other machine, one user for each of the printers, so that when I'm looking at it, when I'm looking at a slicer, all I've got is the profiles that are set up for that printer. And again, the reason why I'm doing that is because having one slicer with different profiles, I found that I just was making an enormous number of profiles for the different characteristics of each printer. And then I'd forget to pick the right one for that printer. So that's why I've gone and done this, so as to have a number of users set up for the number of printers that I have. And it's something you can't really do on Windows or Mac. This is something that's, you can do it on BSD, but really Linux is the easiest way to get that happening. Alright, so that's the remote desktop environment. Now actually dealing with the printers, I might just make this follow me around too. Let's get another desktop. Now here's the printer that I've got running right now, and the webcam stream. Is that working? No, it's not. I think I've unplugged the camera. Anyway, here we go. You can see it's been printing for a while. 6.5 hours is what they expect the print to be. And what I'm printing is one of these. So let's go back to that desktop. That guy. Delete all. So this is what's in the machine. Go back to the source, there you go. So that's what's printing. Now I've built a support for that area there, rather than having the slicer generate support for it. I've actually just designed this solid in the design, so it sits there in the design. All I do is drop the design into the slicer, bang, that support's going. And I put this taper here. The printer has no trouble dealing with the overhangs, so this print's pretty okay. I mean, it's not fantastic, but this prints pretty well without any fuss. Okay, so let's see what the slicing did from that perspective. You can see there's a gap. There's a gap there. I think it's a 0.2mm gap I've left from memory, but that works well enough to support looking at. So you can see here how the print actually works with laying down the flat area. There's a distance generated this way, and it's just adequate to actually make that tube print okay. So I've got that support built into the design, makes it simple. Right, so let's see how that printer's travelling. Temperature's pretty stable. It's annoying I haven't got the camera going. The reason why I've done the remote VNC server is so as to have the ability to drive a computer that's in that room where the printers are without having to be there myself. And I can do that from any of the client machines. What's interesting is you can actually log into the same machine from a number of machines simultaneously. Now let's just do that. I'll just do it again from this machine. Let's see if it'll let me do it the way I hope. Let's use a different piece of software. Okay, so now I'll restart that. So you could actually run multiple sessions the other end, just to make it even more complicated. Anyway, let's try and keep it simple. Debian, local, connect. That's much smaller now. So there's one. Then on the same desktop. So you can see we have two basically identical sessions going on. It's a lot more responsive now because it's not doing quite as much work in the way of pixels. Let's just open Cricut, add, so you can see that machine's quite happy to serve two clients, as well as having multiple users on there. Like we logged in as the user Michael and the user Cricut. Let's log in as user Create, which is a little baby machine. That'll be fine. Opening. That's what it looks like. Okay, so you can see we can run the remote machine, multiple sessions, so you can basically be on a number of different computers, but still use the same central computer for slicing. Plus we can use the Octoprint arrangement running on a Raspberry Pi setup. That setup's called Octopi, to actually drive the printers. So I hope that's been of use to you. If you think it's worthwhile me making a video on how to set all these bits and bobs up, let me know in the comments. Let me know how you actually manage the print system, because there's always more than one way to skin a cat, and it'd be interesting to see what other people do. Anyhow, this is my favourite method. Feel free to like, share, subscribe, ask a question, leave a comment. Bye for now.